Yo, what is up? You have found I Like the Blazers. I'm your host, Brandon Goldner, and with me, I have the co-host of the Trailcasters, the beautiful, the daring, the dashing, and the bold, Keith Feltner-Smith. What's up, Keith?
Oh, man, that was just an old school feeling intro right there, man. I haven't heard that in a long time. How you been?
I've been good. That's why I screwed up the intro, because I knew I wanted to. I still messed it up. I don't think I got the words in the right order. But yeah, I had to.
It was close enough. It was familiar.
I had to turn it back on you. Yeah, if you didn't know, Keith co-hosts the Trailcasters with Ty Delbridge. You should definitely check them out. But what I would like us to check out are a number of different topics, my friend. And one of them is just kind of, I know that we both hit on this in our respective fields, but just your quick feelings on the offseason. I mean, today is Friday. The Blazers are playing their first preseason game today, so that's exciting. We finally have basketball, right? I mean, like, it's been so long. And also just, it's been such a shit year. It's good to it's good to get something. Yeah, go for it.
It's been so long, but it's also been so short. Like, it was just here, but it's just such a weird feeling because normally when the fall hits, especially up here in Oregon, maybe other parts of the country don't feel it as much if you don't have as many seasons, but up here, when the fall hits, it's basketball time.
Yeah.
So when the season ended and then you have fall come on, it's like, where's the basketball?
Yeah, and honestly, like how I felt during the bubble, for whatever reason, maybe it's because like it was like too early into quarantine and stuff, like I just wasn't super into the basketball, but now I'm like really excited for it. Yeah, we have some preseason to look forward to, but let's look back really quick. The Blazers offseason, I just wanted your opinions on how you think that went, because you know they added Robert Covington, Derrick Jones Jr., Enes Kanter. They were able to re-sign Carmelo Anthony and Rodney Hood. They were able to get Harry Giles. They got rid of Mario Hezonja. They got rid of Hassan Whiteside.
Give me all of it.
I'm out of breath. And then they had a draft pick, CJ someone or another, but he's not going to play.
CJ Ellaby.
Thank you. So with all of that, just kind of what are your feelings on how the Blazers offseason went? Are you thumbs up, thumbs down, feeling good about it? Where are you at?
Bro, if I could put this mic down and grow an extra arm, I would be like 3 or 4 or 5 thumbs up. Blazers
You'd be
won
like
the
Zenyatta
offseason.
from Overwatch, just like
Yes. Oh, great reference. Yeah, man, I'll be full on Zen, 6 thumbs up or however many he has. Look, I understand that Blazer fans, obviously, we feel pretty good about this in general, I think. We haven't seen a lot of off seasons where we've had this much action, let alone across the board on paper, which is all we really have right now is on paper. Across the board, these were good moves. Yeah. You upgraded Ariza to Covington. You upgraded Whiteside to Kanter. You upgraded the bench depth. There's so much here, and really, we didn't even have to get rid of that much for it. This is a win for the Blazers. I think even more than that, if you really want to compound it, I'm not trying to take too many of your points either, sir, but just with the number of years that we've sat here waiting and being told by the front office and other people that I'm sure we'll get to as far as, hey, it's coming, don't worry, we're just setting up for a bigger move kind of thing.
Yeah.
This seems like this might finally be those moves. This might be that year that we've been building up and waiting for as far as Dame's era of just how far can he really take this team.
That's how I feel too. And honestly, I was surprised with how much Neil Olshey was able to do in this offseason. And we actually do have a bullet point to talk about Neil Olshey a little bit later. But I'm with you. I was super happy with this, especially as someone who had been saying, like, look, mortgage the future. I don't care. We need to maximize Dame's prime. And I feel like that's what they did.
Yes, very much so.
So I'm feeling pretty good about it. Someone who's not feeling as good is James Harden. He is flexing. He's flexing in Houston.
Man.
I mean, we've all heard about how he was like partying in New Orleans and then he went to Vegas. He reported to camp late. He has to undergo extended COVID testing because of that. And the latest reporting from Shams Charania, I think this was like maybe yesterday, is that Harden has now expanded the list of teams that he may want to go to 4 teams. And I wanted your opinion on this, Keith. What do these 4 teams have in common? The 4 teams are the Philadelphia 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Miami Heat. Keith, what do those 4 teams happen to have in common?
Well, I'm not sure if you're getting to something bigger, but I feel like they are all a little east of Portland. Far enough east, they would be in the Eastern Conference. We're moving James Harden out of the West.
They're pretty far east, man. Like, I mean, why is he running from the Western Conference? That's what's happening. I mean, what's
the Western Conference? He's trying to pull a reverse LeBron, where LeBron went from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference, and James Harden wants the easy road here. He wants more personal accolades, in my opinion, honestly. And I wish I had the receipts to really go back on this, but I swear, if we rewind all the way back to when Harden was originally on the Thunder with KD and Russ back in the day, he was the first one that left that team, right? Yeah, he departed OKC first, and I remember I don't remember what the quote was, but he had some line that basically clarified to me that Harden was about that money. What he cares about is his bag, his fame, his personal glory, nothing else. Wasn't about winning, wasn't about teammates or anything else that can be like LeBron. LeBron's about winning. He's about kind of personal accolades that we see whenever he promotes himself and talks about the hardest championships in the world are the ones I've won. But he does bigger things too. Harden is only about himself, and I feel like we're really seeing that bite him in the ass at this point. I feel like it's pretty good karma, and I could not be happier than to see not only the Rockets fall apart, but to see Harden. Look, he's adding these teams to his list. Oh, I don't just want to go to the Nets. I could take Nets or Philly, and now he's saying Miami or what was the fourth one?
The Bucks. Which is
the Bucks, yeah,
definitely not going to happen. But
not happening at all.
But that's the thing, is that they're all Eastern Conference teams, and it's like,
right.
I don't really begrudge him. Maybe I think back in OKC, he was traded, but it was because he didn't take an extension. There was maybe some stinginess from the GM, but yeah, he wanted a bigger role. And with Russell Westbrook and Durant on that team at the time, I kind of don't begrudge him that maybe he wanted a bigger role. He became the player that he was. But I do think is funny is, when Dwight Howard got to Houston, didn't work out. We're like, Dwight Howard, and then Chris Paul got to Houston, didn't work out. It's like, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook goes to, it's like, no, there's literally one common denominator.
There's one, exactly.
So, okay.
And it's, let me just jump in here just real quick too. And yeah, you're right. He was traded from OKC. It's not like it was his choice, but I swear there was some quotes out there about him saying it wasn't just about the role, but to him, he directly said the contract. I want the money. I want to get the most possible. And look,
there's a reason why the team and the player couldn't come together. I mean, it was a two-way street on that.
Yeah. And I get it that it's part of a certain culture and a certain kind of mindset among a lot of people out there, particularly in NBA lifestyle, as far as get that bag and all that. But you got to have other values. You got to have other priorities in there. And when you're so blatant about I want mine and forget everything else. So I'm not sure where we're at on language on this pod. I had to censor myself there.
Fuck it. No, you're good.
Oh yeah,
you're good. This is over
when he's just saying fuck everything but money.
Well, it's fun when you upload stuff on like YouTube. They're like, "Is this made for kids?" And every time I'm like, "Nope, no, it's not."
No.
Yeah. Yeah, but
here, the one other side of this, as far as the teams that he has put on his list, this has been the real joy for me. When he first had
you're loving every minute of this.
I really do, man. He's like my least favorite player, he and Russ. And so to see Houston collapse and Russ went first, and I'm like, oh man, it's coming. Harden is not going to be happy about this. It's coming. And then it came, and I'm like, yeah, it's falling apart. But when he adds each of these Eastern teams to his list, I just feel like he is shooting himself in the foot each time. He has shot himself in the foot 4 times so far, because if you want to go to the Bucks now have the Bucks don't have to give as much to get you, because they're thinking, hey, he wants to come here. We can kind of leverage that over Houston.
Yeah.
And Houston on the other side is going to say, well, we want to make sure we get value out of this. You're making it harder to get the thing you want by calling it out publicly like that. He thinks he's like entitled to just get his piece. He has no leverage here, no player option or nothing. So I'm sorry. I feel like I'm just running over you. But yeah, thank you for bringing up Harden, man. This is a real joy for me so far before basketball has started.
I can literally see the Schadenfreude just washing over your entire soul. It's funny, though, because you used the word leverage, and you're right. Harden doesn't really have the leverage to decide where to go, and Houston has a relatively new owner. They have a new GM, and given how he's been acting, he may not have the organizational equity or goodwill to control where he goes, which means the Houston Rockets, they don't have to trade him to any of those 4 teams. Just like you said, they could trade him to whoever may offer the most. And so here's what I wanted to ask you as well. Okay, what if James Harden were traded to the Portland
Don't do it! Oh,
Blazers?
no!
CJ McCollum, Anthony Simons, picks until 2046. What do you think?
You'd have to
do
give
you
so much
want
more. Harden
on this team?
No, I absolutely do not want Harden on this team. The thing for me is not only would you have to give up way more than CJ and Ant to make the contracts work, plus the fact that the Blazers already have 14 people on this roster. I'm not going to get too complex about it because I really don't understand a lot of this myself. A lot of it is over my head. But from what has been explained to me, we would have to give up more pieces just to match the contract, and then we have to be getting some pieces back to make sure that we have enough players on the roster. But we're already at 14, so it turns into this thing where you're going to have to give up pieces you care about. You can't just give up these like end of the bench pieces to pick them up. And all that said, it's a 1-year rental. Like, he has more on his contract after more years left, I believe. I think it's 2 left after this one.
It's 2, yeah.
But man, there is nothing to hold him to Portland. And when we have seen Rodney Hood say how much he loves town, and he re-signed here after there was some concern about that, not from him but from fans. When we've seen Melo, who sounds like he had other offers on the table, chose Portland. When Portland has had a reputation for having a hard time with free agents, and Dame has done so much to turn that around in his time here, you don't go and then ruin that by bringing in someone like Harden, who is going to, 99% assuredly leave town after the rental and just leave you with nothing.
But I mean, hey man, look at what Kawhi took to Toronto and left them with a championship. I mean, he was there. He didn't want to be there. He was there for a year.
Okay, what?
Go for it.
Sorry. No, you're fine. If we had Kawhi, I can accept being a Toronto fan where it's like, hey, he may not be a Raptor now, but thank you, Kawhi, for coming up here. I don't want to do that with Harden. I don't want to be sitting here on one hand worshiping Dame Lillard and the quality of character and all the kind of other stuff that we praise here in Portland as far as our ideals. And then on the other hand, I'd be like, yeah, James Harden, you sleaziest basketball player that skirts the rules, finds loopholes in every way possible, and is just
teammates
like an ugly type of basketball to watch. Yeah, all this stuff. Yeah, props to you. I don't want that. I don't want to have to give him credit.
Okay, first of all, it's not going to happen. So the
Right.
Blazers are
Thank
not
you.
getting James Harden. It's just not going to happen.
I feel better. Thank you. Yeah, just keep saying that out loud. I feel better.
But I can't help but imagine, Dame is 30, and when we look at how the Blazers are currently constructed, even as they did get better during this offseason, which they did, is this a title team? I don't know if the Blazers have a higher ceiling if you add James Harden and remove the necessary players and contracts in order to fit him on the team. But I will say it would be super, super interesting. There's no denying how amazing of a scorer he is. There's also no denying that, like you said, the Blazers culture would collapse in on itself like a neutron star. And I just think it would be fascinating if this were a video game, and not just 2K, but if you had like a simulation of life and you could see all the human elements and the personalities and stuff. I would love to see this simulated and see what happens.
The whole network of like all the moving pieces. Listen, the thing is, you mentioned with he and Dame too. You said it earlier. We saw when Dwight Howard came to town and left. We saw when Chris Paul then came in, like, oh man, this is someone who should fit next to Harden. His whole thing is distribution. He should work great with this, and then left. Russ, former teammate, all the language about, yeah, we love playing together. We thinking, oh, this is chemistry that will finally work. 2 guys who are MVP level players. Russ left as quick as he could. I don't want trying to play Dame and Harden next to each other. I feel like is trying to put a positive and negative end of a magnet next to each other, and thinking that it's not going to just fly opposite directions as fast as it can.
It probably would be a shit show, but the one difference would be that Houston was unequivocally Harden's team. Portland is unequivocally Damian Lillard's team. Signed, sealed, and delivered.
You think Harden would be okay with that?
No, but I don't think. See, that's the thing. It's like.
There you go.
I don't think that there is a player in the league that could come play in Portland and make Damian Lillard not the franchise player if he were still on this team. I don't think you could put LeBron here and have that happen. I don't think you could put Giannis here and have that happen. Even if those 2 players are better than Damian Lillard, which those 2 players are, Damian Lillard is inextricably, what is the word I'm looking for? Connected with
inextricably
something like that. I can't think of the word. He is connected
inextricably.
That's close enough to me.
So close, yeah.
Damian Lillard is connected with the fiber of this franchise and this fan base in a way that cannot be dislodged, even by someone like James Harden. And so, I think it would be a shit show, but it would be fascinating to me. Just to repeat, James Harden's not coming to Portland, so don't worry about it. / don't get your hopes up. So pivoting a little bit from players to general managers, Neil Olshey. I wanted to ask you about this because, Neil Olshey is now operating under the leadership of a different owner, right? It's Jody Allen now, no longer Paul Allen. And Jody Allen has a different ownership style than Paul did, and Olshey said as much during a recent press conference. He was talking about how Jody Allen really cares to set the big picture 30,000 foot frame and planning of the team, and then have Olshey and the rest of the organization follow that, where Paul really liked to get into details. We both know how much he loved his draft picks and his point guards. And I think I was talking about it with Evan McCarthy on a pod a couple weeks ago, like the Nolan Smiths of the world, and the different players that we knew were kind of like Paul Allen picks.
So many small guards.
But with that, do you think that having a different owner has changed Neil Olshey's approach to the moves that the Blazers have made in the last year or two? Like, do you think that Olshey would have made different moves had he still been operating under Paul Allen rather than Jody?
That is an interesting question, man. It's hard not to think that it's a factor. It's since we know Paul Allen was such an active owner, and we saw such a trend year after year of a certain kind of draft target, I guess would be the best way to put it. Because it's not like they only drafted small guards, but there was definitely a type of player where if they were available, you kind of knew Blazers were looking at him. Nolan Smith, I think, is the perfect example. I can't think of anyone else who comes off the top of my head. Because some of these names you try to forget, like where a lot of them tend to be players that Portland attaches to, maybe, whether that's partly from the team forcing the narrative or if fans actually care about them. But yeah, a lot of these dudes just underperform because I think Paul Allen or the front office at the time was trying to fit a certain formula. But at this point, yeah, when you see the roster this year, like let's say, I think going into this season, there were two kind of big questions about the roster. It was a backup guard, a backup ball handler, and front court depth. The backup ball handler is still possibly a question. Depends on how much you believe in Anthony Simons versus CJ. If you can stagger Dame and CJ or play them together, all these options. But the front court and like the front court and the wings. I think you and I talked about the wings a bunch on previous episodes of Trailcasters back in the day. That is handled. We have those things covered and twice over at this point with quality players, not just not your Mario Hazonia or your I don't want to be too rude to Aaron Follow,
rotation depth.
Yeah, legit depth where it's just there's so much more on this roster. I've been talking a bunch with different people this last week about, is this the best roster that Blazers have had under Damian Lillard? And I think the other one that has come up the most has been the Dame, Wes, Nick Batum, Aldridge, Rolo lineup. At the time, though, not only did that roster, when Wes injured himself and LaFleur had to step up, that kind of changed everything. But beyond that, the bench on that team was pretty atrocious. And I feel like it'd be hard to argue otherwise that this isn't the best team we've had in Portland in Dame's timeline.
It's definitely the deepest, and you just said why. And I think that's going to be extra important. This has actually come up in the last two podcasts I've had, that particularly in this season with a 72 game scheduled that is compressed, with the overwhelming possibility that teams are going to lose games due to COVID and injury, that having a team where you can run 11 deep with NBA players that the Blazers have now is going to be disproportionately helpful in a season like this one than in seasons past. And I'm with you. I do think this is the deepest team the Blazers have ever had, and then arguably the most talented, maybe not starting five-wise, but definitely in the rotation. And you also said it too, just kind of top to bottom, evaluating Neil Olshey under this new ownership. Danny LaRue of the Dunked On podcast has joked about Neil Olshey being allergic to wings, right? And that finally, in him and Nate Duncan's evaluation of the Blazers offseason, they had to give Olshey credit. They actually got some wings, right? So
lots of wings,
just so many chicken wings. Do you think that Neil Olshey, do you think he should be judged differently based on the moves that we're seeing now? Because perhaps under this new ownership, maybe what we're seeing is like a new, unvarnished, undistilled version of Neil Olshey and his vision of how to build around Dame. Like, do you think that maybe Olshey should be graded differently, evaluated differently now that he has a little bit more freedom?
It's tough, man. Because you're not wrong.
I know how much you love Neil Olshey.
Like it's sometimes it is hard. I try to be flexible. I try to be open to change and evolving as a person, growing as a person as I learn more about everything around me in the world. But trashing Olshey for some of the moves he's made that's really hard to move away from. I will definitely say this offseason has been his best with the Blazers franchise. Do I want to give him all that credit though? What you're pointing out though, as far as basically saying that Paul Allen, I don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like restrained him from making some of the moves he wanted to make. I don't think that's even wrong, but I also don't know. Look, the other thing we've heard from Olshey for years is that he was always building up towards like, oh, we're kind of like biding time and kind of building up to a season when we can really have flexibility. And if this season works, you're going to hear lots from Olshey and the front office that this was that season they've been building up for. So how much of this was the plan all along versus how much of it is, like you're saying, the ownership changed and now he can finally do what he wanted to do the whole time?
If he tries to say that, I'm going to call bullshit. Like, this was not a season. And look, to his credit, like, this was not a season where they had a ton of flexibility, and yet the Blazers made a number of really solid moves. Like, again, like, I am legitimately impressed. I've said, you know, this does change my view of Olshey a little bit, and I am watching. I am watching carefully, particularly from this moment on. If he continues making solid moves, I'm gonna wonder whether Paul Allen, you know, was, as much as he loved this team, I wonder if maybe his insistence that he be in on some of the decision making, if maybe that wasn't the right thing after all, which may be blasphemous, but just a thought.
Well, and let's be clear, yeah, I don't think it's blasphemous to say that anyone is flawed. Like all you're saying is that Paul Allen had a flaw.
Definitely not.
The point here being that, like, Paul Allen was a great owner in many, many ways. He did undeniable things for the franchise, even just keeping them here in Portland when that was a question for a while. Look, let's look at Dallas. Let's look at the Mavericks. Mark Cuban, again, another fantastic owner overall, in my opinion. Is he perfect? Has he made mistakes regarding gender roles? Sorry, not the right. The staff, I guess, and appropriate gender etiquette in the front office down there in Dallas? No, he's not been perfect. But overall, I don't think we're going to look back on him because of that one thing and say, what a horrible owner. So I don't think we should look at Paul Allen either and say, just because he had an affinity for small guards, that it was bad. Look, we got Damian here eventually, so he got it right sooner or later. And I mean, because again, I'm gonna stick with that. Olshey did not draft Dame.
No,
that was
he definitely
in that offseason.
He walked into that, and that was already we'll see. I mean, I just think it's an interesting thing to think about. And as we move, you know, towards the middle of this season, if the Blazers do or don't do anything, and kind of next season, if maybe Olshey should be graded a little bit differently. Let's go to
he definitely has earned a little bit of a pass. How about that?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry. I don't mean to cut you
you're
off.
good. I think, I mean, as a minimum, as someone, you know, I have not been a huge supporter of Neil Olshey, specifically in his personnel moves, right? And I need to give him credit for what he did in this offseason, and I'm super excited to see how it all pans out, and hopefully it works out okay. And kind of related to that, we have games coming up. I wanted to get to some predictions.
Here we go.
Woo! I wanted to get to some predictions for the regular season, but I'm going to call an audible really quick because there is a game tonight. I think I'm going to be able to get this out quick enough. I think it's in 4 hours. The Blazers are playing the Kings in what I think is a nationally televised preseason game. Do I have that right?
I believe it is, yeah.
Which is bizarre on both counts, that it's a preseason game and that it's against the Kings and it'd be nationally televised. Just a quick, dirty prediction on tonight's preseason game, and then we'll get into the first two regular season games. So Blazers versus Kings. Who you got? It's the Hassan Whiteside revenge game. Oh boy.
Oh, I love it. It is the Hassan Whiteside revenge game. I'm feeling pretty good about Blazers here, though. I know we've heard that Nurk and Zach and there was one other. Oh, Nasir Little are sitting out tonight. So yeah, you lose a little bit there, but I am so. You mentioned it's the Hassan Whiteside revenge game. In my mind, it's the Harry Giles revenge game. I think Harry Giles is going to be real. I'm really excited to see what he can do tonight. And honestly, I would love to see him get half the minutes at center tonight. Like, Kanter is going to be there. Nurk is not. We don't need Kanter to overplay. We know what he has. If you get Giles 24-ish minutes and really see what he can give us, man, that could just. We're talking about Blazer depth. That gives you even more in the front court.
He's looked good in practice, and actually maybe more than that. I mean, he played legit minutes last season for the Kings. I mean, he was starting for a dozen or 2 dozen games and was able to handle 30-ish minutes a game and looked good. So yeah, I'm interested to see Giles too. I actually think that, kind of an aside, I think Harry Giles has a real shot at bumping Zach Collins out of the rotation, especially because we know
that's a thing.
Yeah, well, because Collins isn't going to be back until early next year anyway, and I think if Giles establishes himself, he has a chance to kind of bump him out a bit. Yeah, I have the Blazers winning this game too, although they are without Nurk, and they're fitting in a lot of new pieces, right? The Derrick Jones Jr., Robert Covington, Cantor, Hood is going to be back. I think he's scheduled to play tonight on a minutes limit,
I'm not sure. I feel like I actually might have heard he's not playing, because I said Nasir a little, but I felt like there was a fourth player, and so it's
it might be Hood.
Nurk. Yeah, I think Hood is all sitting out. They're just, I think, probably trying to bring him back slow. Again, we've got the wing depth. We don't need him in here immediately. And if anything, you just want to kind of give him time to acclimate. You mentioned Harry Giles over Collins. I'm totally with you on that. I'm not out on Collins yet, but he has shown a propensity for injuries, unfortunately, and he, even when he's been on the floor, he hasn't been the best at staying on the floor as far as foul trouble goes. And I do almost feel like Harry Giles, similar age and a different skill set a little bit, but just a very talented young big, he might just kind of be that Zach Collins insurance. If this, if he shows out this year and Zach Collins doesn't, that might be kind of the change in course a little bit.
I mean, remember that Harry Giles, who also has a history of injuries himself, but he was like,
yeah, it's not wrong.
He was like the top high school prospect coming out, right? I mean, he has legitimate star potential. I think if you were looking at a best case scenario for someone who had pretty serious injuries, look at Michael Porter Jr. and how he's been developing in Denver, right? Like, he was playing legit minutes near the end of last season, and Denver's pretty high on him, right? And so, I'm not going to expect anything from Giles. If we do get something from him, I think it's a huge bonus. But look, he looked good last year. He's been looking good in practice, so, one can hope. Okay, so we both had the Blazers winning this preseason game tonight against the Kings. Let's move to the first 2 regular season games. I think what I'm going to try to do this year, I'd created a little spreadsheet for the Blazers rotations, and I think I'm now going to add. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's by the way, when you have that many players who all kind of deserve minutes, it's very difficult to shuffle everyone around in the different positions, and you get to, well, if I take minutes from Trent Jr. and then they don't go to Melo, but then what about Simons? And it's a weird puzzle. But with that, I think I'm going to add the entire NBA schedule and just have a prediction from myself and a guest on the pod, and just see kind of who wins at the end of the year, who gets closest to the actual result, Brandon or the guest. So you are helping to pilot this. So we're going to talk about the first 2 regular season games. The first one is on the 23rd against the Jazz, and the second one's on the 26th against the Rockets. Both of those are at home in Portland. So a little background on the Jazz, and we'll talk about that one. So Donovan Mitchell signed a 5-year deal, right? He made the All-Star team last year. Utah still has Rudy Gobert. They have Mike Conley, who was super disappointing and maybe past his prime. Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, and then they also got Derek Favors, who's back after taking a year off in New Orleans. We know that Utah blew a 3-1 lead to the Clippers or to the to the Nuggets last year.
Sorry. You got me there. You said Derek Favors took a year off. I'm like, wait, he was out of the league, and it was in New Orleans. I get the joke now. I see what you did there. But I was like, wait, Derek Favors was out? Why didn't we pick him up? Damn.
Took a little vacation with our homie Evan M in New Orleans. And Utah, Utah blew that 3-1 lead to the Nuggets last year in the playoffs, because the Nuggets had 2 series which they came down from being down 3-1. So this game's going to be in Portland. And one kind of a little anecdote to share before I ask your prediction. Donovan Mitchell said that the Jazz need to hold themselves to a high standard. Quote, we blew a 3-1 lead. We lost in the first round. There's no time for that. There's no time for slow starts, end quote. Which makes me think that Utah will be taking this game seriously. So the game is in Portland. It's against a good team. Keith, who comes out on top of this game, Blazers or the Jazz?
Well, Donovan is right. There is no time for slow starts, and that's something that we've heard a lot here in Portland for a number of years as well.
Have we?
And I don't think we can afford to start slow either, man. So I get that both teams are going to be fired up for this. I think it's a great way to start the season, is a game where both teams are saying this matters right off the bat. but it's a home opener for us. We have an amazing record on our home openers. Our roster is deeper, like we've said already. Dame is a better version of Donovan, in my opinion, and Nurk is a better version of Gobert. I'm not saying that one's a little harder to compare. I get the defensive skill set is a little different, but I would take Nurk over Gobert if you're giving me just a choice of centers to build a franchise on. I would take Nurk on it, man.
That's another podcast. Look, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Look, even let me just tease it with this too. At the very least, you got to factor in, if we're talking roster depth here, I want to also look not only in the beginning of the season at the start here, but all season. What I think is really going to matter is team chemistry. And if there's one team that can just say we have chemistry on a lock, it's the Blazers. One team who can't say that would be Utah, who had Rudy Gobert essentially started the NBA's perspective on COVID with the way that whole interview went. Yeah. And then the drama that you had between he and Donovan, there was a lot of talk for a while. Could they even continue to be teammates together? So I'm not saying they haven't repaired that. Guys can move on. We can, these are two young athletes. I'm sure they've kind of had their piece together and gone back on the court, but that's not the same chemistry that Blazers have. So I feel like that's just one more advantage we have here for our home opener. I'm giving that to the Blazers.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had forgotten about that. And yeah, I mean, once a kerfuffle between teammates gets to the point where the public knows about it, it's not great. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna need a score from you. I'm gonna need a score.
Oh, I like
here.
it.
And
okay.
Thinking about, I mean, obviously you don't have to stress it too much, but like if the Blazers win, like what do you think the score might be?
Okay.
So
if this was further down the season, okay, go ahead.
My prediction for this game is that the Blazers do win. I have the Blazers winning 104-96. So that's.
Oh boy, that is super close to what I was thinking in my head, honestly. Because I was thinking if this is later on in the season, I could see like a 115-108 kind of feel or something like that. It's not going to be a large gap it never is with Portland. We never win by large gaps because that's just not the way we play. I almost feel like they want to. It's like when you have like a little brother and you want to kind of keep them entertained. So you're like, oh, no, come on, grab it, and then tug. And like, oh, I'm still winning, but go ahead, grab it again. And sometimes that bites us in the ass a little bit. What's a better analogy for that, honestly, is the way my puppy plays. Because you're trying to train him, like get him to drop something, and you give it to him, and then he's like, oh, yeah, you want this? Then runs down the hall the other direction with it. He thinks he's winning. And most of the time he might be. But sometimes I, as that opposing team, can come back and get that toy from him and steal that W. If this is all still making sense in a Blazers perspective, then good on you for following along.
I feel like I just took a tab of acid, but I love it.
So anyway, as far as the score for that game, it was a good
analogy. I appreciated it.
I'm saying Blazers. You said 104-96 on Jazz. Yeah. I'm gonna go Price is Right on you. I'm gonna say 105-98.
105-98. Okay, great. We're locking it in. All right. So we both have the Blazers winning that home opener against Utah. So then we move to the Blazers playing the Rockets again in Portland. And we love talking about the Rockets, right? They lost Westbrook. They're probably going to lose Harden, and maybe he's not traded by the beginning of the season, but it's certainly possible.
Oh, interesting point.
Yeah. Remember the Blazers stole Robert Covington from the Rockets. Yoink! And the Rockets did pick up Christian Wood, who had a nice year in Detroit, a good young piece. Not a star by any means, but he's a good player. And the Rockets also lost their general manager, Daryl Morey. They lost their head coach, Mike D'Antoni. They have a rookie coach in Steven Silas, and God bless Steven Silas. That is a tough gig.
Guy, man.
It's a tough gig to walk into. And the Rockets, they have, the ghost of Boogie Cousins, and they have John Wall. And we look at what they did last
year. Boogie.
Yeah, I know. Ooh. If you look at what they did last year, and again, this team, the Rockets, is going to look much different than they did in the playoffs. Unlike the Jazz, the Jazz have a decent amount of continuity. The Rockets don't. But remember that the Rockets beat the Thunder in 7 before losing in 5 to the Lakers. But this franchise is a goddamn dumpster fire. Okay, so what is your prediction?
And I couldn't be happier.
As someone who has just not cared for the Rockets or James Harden at all for a long time, I also feel just that Schadenfreude is probably the best word for it.
There's literally only one franchise in the entire NBA that I would love to see burn down more than the Rockets. There's only one.
Which one?
You know who that is.
Who is it?
It's the Lakers.
Oh, okay.
Come on. How could you not want the Lakers, man? Like, it's the biggest
LeBron,
rivalry. I respect the hell out of LeBron, but the rest of the team and the rest of what they stand for, even down to the purple and gold uniforms and what that symbolizes, I'm totally against everything they are. So yeah,
the Lakers fans are the worst. I mean, they really are.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The bandwagoniest of the most bandwagon. Okay, so the Rockets. What do you think? Again, this game is in Portland. We kind of went through where they are. Do you think the Blazers picked this up, or do you think the Rockets picked this up? And let's hear a score from you too.
This is like this one I can comfortably put in the we're saying like I wanted to go 115 with the game against Jazz and couldn't quite do it. I would say right off the bat like 120, and Rockets be happy if they get triple digits. I would be honestly not that surprised if you see them go below. I'm not saying Christian Wood is bad. John Wall, he'll be ready even if Harden is there with them. That's probably the one way this game is closer is if Harden is still there. But even then, man, it's like I feel like that team, I don't know how Harden can play basketball with the rest of them when he's been so clear that he wants out. And not just clear that he wants out like where the rest of the team, the rest of the players would be against him. This dude is not only not showing up for his job, like not showing up to training camp as a millionaire athlete, he's getting like all the photos at the club, the birthday for a little baby and all this. He's not hiding at all. He's not being ashamed of this. I feel like if he went into practice, you wouldn't just have the issue of Christian Wood or other players not wanting to be with him. He doesn't want to be with any of them. This isn't his team anymore. He wants out. So, I mean, man, in that sense, maybe it's almost better if he plays, if he stays on the Rockets for that first game against us. That'd be kind of nice. Like one more chance to just really boo him in the Rockets uniform. And you know what else? If we need icing on the cake here, this is one of the few games where we have 2 days off between games. Almost the whole rest of the season, it's every other day or back to back. But the Jazz opener is on the 23rd, and this is on the 26th. So we're coming in rested and freshly awoken off of that win over the Jazz. I feel like this is going to be a good spot for the Blazers. We're going to be 2-0 before the schedule gets a little tougher.
I like it. I'm going to need to hear a number, though, on the Rockets, though.
Oh, right. The
Blazers
score.
120, Rockets what?
They might get near the triple digits, so we'll go 98 again. 98 for both of the first two opponents, and that could happen.
I like it. I went even further than you. So I'm in my score prediction. This one's probably going to ruin the rest of the average, but I'm assuming that Harden is moved pretty quickly. His trade value is not, I mean, the offers that the Rockets are getting that they're not telling anybody about, that are not being leaked to the press, those offers are not going to get any better between now and when. They're just not. I mean, he has 2 years left on his contract. Like, this is not like I have 3 months left. But we want
KD or Kyrie.
Right. So I have a sense that the Rockets are going to trade him relatively quickly. So I'm assuming he's gone. So my score is Blazers 125, Rockets 89. So that would be I
love it.
An unbelievable, Ant Simons is playing 30 minutes in this game. So it's like garbage time from the beginning of the third quarter. So that's where I'm going to go.
Give me another Ant Simons game, like give me another game like what Ant had against the Kings the end of the last season, like the season before. God, time is weird at this point. It's really hard to tell. Like, what was a year ago? But yeah, give me another one of those Ant Simons games. That'd be awesome.
I'm getting those those reminders on Instagram or Facebook where it's like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. It's like one year ago. Like what? Like it's it is odd.
You know what else though? You know what else with this game? The Rocco revenge game. We mentioned Whiteside and Harry Giles last time, or for the preseason with Whiteside and Harry Giles. But yeah, the Rocco revenge game, man. He got moved off the Rockets. I mean, maybe he doesn't feel too badly about it down there, but I feel like if anything, if he likes being up here, if he's feeling it in Portland, he's going to want to show out against his former team. So yeah, let's see that giant gap. Like I would love to see a 30-point win at the start of the season for the Blazers. That would be awesome.
Oh man, it'd be so much fun. Well, I'm looking forward to the preseason game tonight, and just for basketball to start up again. Was there anything else you wanted to hit before we bounce?
I'm good, man. Thanks so much for having me on here. It's good to see you again, and good to kind of stretch the legs, get back into podcasting after a crazy COVID summer.
Yeah, I was looking at the back end of the podcast feed and seeing just the gap in the podcast I've been doing too, and it is just like, whoa. But man, if anyone wanted to check out your work with the Trailcasters or just hit you up on Twitter and make fun of you for your various predictions, how would people do that?
Always come and contact me. Always ask me questions or make fun of me for all of my takes. I'm very open to being made fun of. I'm very much a homer, and I do not hide it. You can find me at Rip City Keith. You can find the Trailcasters at Trailcasters, and you can also email us at trailcasters@gmail.com. We take all the questions, all the conversations. Always good to talk basketball and Blazers.
Rad. Keith, appreciate you. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you, Brandon. Have a good day.
Thank you once again to Keith Feltner-Smith of the Trailcasters. It's always good to catch up with him. And if you want to catch up with us, you can do that at ILiketheBlazers.com, or you can find us on Twitter or Facebook at ILiketheBlazers. You can also send us emails at ILiketheBlazers@gmail.com. Another fun episode. I appreciate all of you for listening, and I am excited for basketball to start. So until next time, thank you all again, and go Blazers.